What happens when a black girl becomes the target of the most feared bully in school? He is determined to break her, pushing her to the edge, but an unexpected twist changes everything, challenging not only his power but also the deep-rooted prejudices surrounding them. Follow the story to see what happens on BUP Stories. The story follows Maya Robinson, a student at Jefferson High School in Charleston, South Carolina. As one of the few black students in the entire school, she is well aware of her place. Maya quickly realizes that her position is always on the margins, a truth that is constantly reinforced in both subtle and blatant ways. It's in the way teachers seem stricter with her, how the school security watches her more closely whenever she walks by, and how some classmates whisper just loud enough for her to hear. Why is she even here? Guess they needed a diversity quota. Bet her dad's some deadbeat who ran off a long time ago. She ignored it all. She had no other choice. If she reacted, she knew what would happen. She'd be labeled angry, aggressive, trouble. She had seen it before. So she kept her head down, sat alone at lunch, spoke only when necessary, and tried to avoid drawing attention to herself. But Ethan Carter made sure that was impossible. Ethan was the golden boy of Jefferson High. He had everything: money, connections, the kind of last name that opened doors. His father was Judge Carter, a man whose influence extended far beyond the school's walls. Ethan walked the halls with the confidence of someone who had never faced a real consequence in his life. Teachers loved him, parents invited him to country club parties, and students followed his lead. And for the past 2 months, Maya had been his personal target. It started small, knocking her books to the floor, pretending not to see her in the hallway, and bumping into her just hard enough to make her stumble. But soon it became worse. When she walked past, he and his friends would mutter just loudly enough for her to hear. "Careful, don't get too close, she might steal something." "Think she even showers?" "Bet she smells like that cheap hair grease." "Surprised she's even in this school, thought her kind dropped out by now." And they would laugh while Maya clenched her fists, forcing herself to keep walking. She had learned long ago that speaking up wouldn't change anything. Teachers would look the other way, the principal would dismiss it as boys being boys, and tomorrow it would start all over again on BUP Stories. Today was no different. She had just unwrapped her peanut butter sandwich when a hand snatched her brown paper bag from the table. Her stomach sank before she even looked up. She already knew who it was. Ethan stood over her, shaking the bag in the air. "What for lunch, Robinson?" he said, tearing it open with exaggerated disgust. "Peanut butter, seriously? What, your dad's new job doesn't pay enough for real food?" Laughter rippled through the cafeteria. Maya's hands curled into fists under the table. She wanted to say something, to tell him to shut up, to snatch the sandwich back, but she didn't. She never did. Ethan leaned in closer, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You should really say thank you. I'm just helping you keep that big mouth of yours shut." He tossed the sandwich over his shoulder, and it landed with a soft splat on the cafeteria floor. Maya's stomach twisted, but she wasn't going to cry, not here, not in front of them. She reached down to grab what was left, but before she could, Ethan's polished dress shoe came down on it, grinding it into the tile. "Oops." Someone snickered. "Should be used to picking up scraps anyway." More laughter. The world seemed to shrink, the sound of their taunts ringing in her ears. She could feel their eyes on her, watching, waiting for her to react, but she wouldn't give them that satisfaction. She grabbed her backpack, pushed past the tables, past the whispers, past the smirks, and kept walking. But just as she reached the edge of the cafeteria, she heard another voice. Enough! The room fell silent. Maya turned and saw Luke Henderson, one of the few students at Jefferson High who never seemed to follow the crowd. He was tall, with shaggy blonde hair and sharp blue eyes, the kind of guy who could have easily blended in with Ethan's group but never did. Ethan smirked, clearly amused. "Henderson, you lost or something?" Luke didn't flinch. "I said enough. Leave her alone." The tension in the cafeteria thickened. Ethan tilted his head, considering. "Didn't realize you were into charity cases." Luke's jaw tightened. "Didn't realize you were such a coward." A murmur ran through the room. Maya held her breath, watching as Ethan's expression darkened. For the first time, someone had challenged him out loud, in front of everyone. He glanced around, probably realizing that if he pushed it further, he might lose control of the moment. So he just scoffed, shaking his head. "Relax, man, just having a little fun." He turned away, but not before sending Maya a sharp warning glance. Luke hesitated, then turned to her. "You okay?" Maya didn't know how to respond. No one had ever stepped in for her before. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He gestured toward the empty seat across from her. "Mind if I sit?" She blinked. "You want to sit here?" Luke shrugged. "I figure if I do, maybe next time someone else will." Maya didn't know if that was true, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone from BUP stories. That night, she barely spoke when she got home. She dropped her backpack by the door of her bedroom and shut it softly behind her. She wasn't the type to slam doors, even in her own house. She knew how to disappear. But her father noticed. "Maya," his deep voice carried through the door, "everything okay?" She hesitated, fingers tightening around the strap of her backpack before she dropped it onto the bed. "Yeah," she said, "just tired." A pause, then a quiet sigh. "Dinner's in an hour." She listened to his footsteps fade before she exhaled. Her father had enough to deal with, moving to a new town, stepping into the police chief's office, trying to clean up the mess left behind by the last guy. She wasn't about to add high school drama to his plate. She could handle it. Except the next day, Ethan made sure she couldn't ignore him. Before first period, she was pulling books from her locker when something slammed against her back hard. She stumbled forward, her forehead nearly smacking into the cold metal. Laughter. She turned slowly. Ethan leaned against the lockers, smirking. "My bad, Robinson, didn't see you there." Her fists clenched at her sides, but she said nothing. That was what he wanted, a reaction. But Ethan wasn't satisfied. By lunchtime, the rumor had already spread. She wasn't sure who started it, but she could guess. As she walked into the cafeteria, whispers followed her. "Did you hear?" She tried to fight Ethan. "No way." "Yeah, swung on him and everything, but she cried after." She stopped in her tracks, her mouth dry. Ethan sat at his usual table, scrolling through his phone like none of it mattered. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her sweater. This was worse than the shoving, worse than the stolen lunches. This was making sure she was alone, making sure no one wanted to sit with her, talk to her, be seen with her. And it worked. Except this time, as she moved toward her usual lonely table, Luke slid into the seat across from her again. And this time, people noticed from BUP stories. Maya knew the moment she walked into school the next morning that something had shifted. The way students looked at her wasn't the same as before. It wasn't just the usual cold indifference, the barely hidden sneer. Now there was something different: interest. Whispers trailed behind her like shadows. Some people pointed, others smirked, a few just stared. She caught a group of girls huddled by their lockers, eyes flicking between her and their phones, their laughter sharp and cruel. Her stomach twisted. Something was coming. By the time she reached her locker, she saw him, Ethan, leaning against the wall like he had all the time in the world, his arms crossed, that smug grin playing on his lips. Luke was a few feet away, talking to someone, oblivious. Maya focused on her lock, willing herself to stay calm. "Enjoying your new little bodyguard, Robinson?" Ethan's voice was light, mocking. "Didn't know you needed a white savior." Maya stiffened. She knew better than to engage, but the words hit something raw inside her. She yanked her locker open, ignoring him. Ethan chuckled. "Bet you think he actually gives a damn, but we both know how this ends, don't we? He'll get bored, move on, and then where will you be?" Maya slammed her locker shut. "I don't need anyone to fight for me." Ethan raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's cute, but let's be real, Robinson. You and I both know that kids like me, we win. Kids like you disappear." He leaned in closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "And if you don't disappear, I'll make sure you wish you had." Maya felt her hands tremble, not with fear, but with something else, something darker. She had spent months swallowing her anger, burying it deep. She had spent years pretending words didn't cut as deep as knives. But this time, something in her cracked. Before she could say anything, Luke appeared at her side. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was steady, calm, but there was something dangerous beneath it. Ethan smirked, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Henderson, just a friendly chat." Luke didn't move. "Doesn't look that way to me." Ethan held his gaze for a moment before letting out a dramatic sigh. "Fine, whatever, just trying to help Robinson here realize her place." He turned to walk away but paused, glancing over his shoulder. "Oh, and Maya, you should check your phone." The moment he was gone, Maya pulled out her phone. Her stomach dropped. Her notifications were flooded. She clicked on one of the links and felt her breath catch in her throat. It was a photo of her, the one from yesterday when she had shoved Ethan in the parking lot, but it had been altered. Her face was twisted into an ugly snarl, her hands clenched into claws. Across the top, in bold red letters, "Psycho Robinson can't control herself." Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the comments. "Wow, she looks insane. No wonder she has no friends. She probably attacked Luke too. Bet she's playing victim." Her chest tightened. It wasn't just a rumor now, it was something worse, something people could see, something they could believe. Luke leaned in, looking over her shoulder. His jaw tightened. "This is," Maya swallowed, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. It doesn't matter. Luke looked at her sharply. Of course it matters. This isn't just some stupid joke. They're trying to destroy you. Maya let out a hollow laugh. And what am I supposed to do? Go to the principal? You think Dorson's going to do anything? Ethan's dad basically owns this town. Luke exhaled slowly, like he was trying to keep himself from saying something reckless. Then, without another word, he took out his own phone. Maya frowned. What are you doing? Fixing this, he muttered. Within minutes, a new post appeared on social media. Luke had taken a screenshot of the edited photo and posted it with a caption, "This is what bullies do when they're scared. They lie, they manipulate, and they use power to silence people. Don't fall for it." Maya's eyes widened. Luke, you don't have to. I do. His voice was firm. Because if people like me don't speak up, people like Ethan keep winning. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt something other than exhaustion, hope. Maybe, just maybe, Ethan wasn't as untouchable as he thought from BUP stories. But Maya should have known Ethan wasn't going to let this go. By lunchtime, the cafeteria was buzzing. Luke's post had gone viral, at least by Jefferson High standards. Some students were starting to question things, others were doubling down, insisting Maya was just playing the victim. Ethan, however, was nowhere to be seen. Maya should have known that wasn't a good sign. She was halfway through her meal when the doors to the cafeteria swung open, and Ethan walked in. But he wasn't alone. His father, Judge Carter, was right behind him, and trailing after them, looking pale and tense, was Principal Dorson. The room went silent. Dorson cleared his throat, looking directly at Luke. "Mr. Henderson, a word." Luke's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. "Sure." He followed Dorson out of the cafeteria, Ethan smirking as he passed. Maya's stomach churned. She had a bad feeling about this. 20 minutes later, Luke returned, his face unreadable. He sat down, poking at his food with his fork. Maya leaned in. "What happened?" Luke's jaw tightened. "They're threatening to suspend me." Maya's blood ran cold. "What?" "Judge Carter is calling it defamation," Luke said bitterly. "Dorson doesn't want to fight, so he's giving me one last chance to take the post down and apologize." Maya's hands curled into fists. Of course, Ethan's father wasn't just protecting his son, he was using his power to silence anyone who stood against him. Luke looked at her, his expression serious. "I'm not taking it down." Maya felt something in her chest tighten. "Luke, if they suspend you, then they suspend me." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with defiance. "I won't let them scare me into silence." Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. She had spent so long feeling alone, and now, for the first time, someone was standing beside her, someone was willing to fight for what was right. She wasn't going to let that go to waste. Maya exhaled slowly, straightening in her seat. "Then we fight back." Luke smirked. "Now you're talking." Neither of them knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain: Ethan Carter wasn't going to win this time from BUP stories. Maya barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's smirk, Judge Carter's cold, calculating stare, and Luke's determined face as he refused to back down. the weight of it all pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She had spent so long convincing herself that none of this mattered, that she could just endure it and eventually it would go away. But it wasn't going away, it was growing, spreading like wildfire, and now Luke was caught in it too. The next morning, the air at Jefferson High was thick with tension. Students whispered in hushed voices, their eyes darting toward Maya and Luke every time they walked past. They knew something was coming, but none of them could have predicted just how big it would be. By second period, Luke was called to the principal's office again. Maya watched him go, her stomach twisted in knots. 40 minutes later, he returned, his face unreadable. He sat beside her in class, staring straight ahead. "What happened?" she asked under her breath. Luke exhaled, shaking his head. "Same thing as yesterday. They're threatening to suspend me unless I take the post down, but this time they made a mistake." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" Luke turned to her, his expression grim but determined. "They called my dad." Maya's stomach dropped. She had never thought much about Luke's family. He never talked about them, and she had assumed they were just another middle-class family trying to get by. But she was wrong. Luke's father wasn't just some office worker or business owner, he was Daniel Henderson, the U.S. Attorney for the District of South Carolina, a federal prosecutor. And now he knew everything. By lunchtime, the entire school was buzzing. Luke's dad had arrived at Jefferson High with a team of federal investigators. They had marched straight past the front desk, their suits crisp, their expressions unreadable. Students craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening. Maya sat in stunned silence, watching it all unfold. 30 minutes later, an announcement came over the intercom. All students are to remain in their classrooms until further notice. The halls emptied, doors shut. A few minutes later, a security officer walked into the principal's office, and then, just like that, Principal Dorson was escorted out of the building. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "What just happened?" she whispered to Luke. Luke leaned back in his chair, watching as Dorson was led to his car, his face pale as a sheet. "My dad found something." Maya didn't have to ask what. Dorson had covered for Ethan, had let him harass her, had ignored every complaint against him, and now someone with real power had finally done something about it. From BUP stories. The news spread like wildfire. By the end of the day, students whispered about how Dorson had been placed on immediate administrative leave pending an investigation. Some claimed he had taken bribes from Judge Carter, others said he had been covering up misconduct for years. But the biggest shock came that evening. Maya was sitting at home when the local news played a breaking story. Judge Carter is facing a federal corruption probe after it was discovered that he used his position to intimidate school officials and obstruct justice. Sources say the investigation stems from a complaint filed by U.S. Attorney Daniel Henderson, whose son was allegedly threatened for defending a fellow student against Carter's son, Ethan. Maya's jaw dropped. Judge Carter was being investigated. She grabbed her phone and called Luke. "Did you see the news?" she asked breathlessly. Luke's voice was calm, but there was a satisfaction behind it. "Yeah, my dad doesn't play around." Maya exhaled, gripping her phone tighter. "What's going to happen now?" Luke hesitated for a second. "Ethan's getting expelled." Maya blinked. "Expelled?" "Yeah, my dad made sure of it." They're not just suspending him this time, Luke sighed. And Judge Carter, let's just say he won't be sitting on the bench much longer. Maya leaned back against the couch, her heart pounding. This was real. It wasn't just another slap on the wrist. For the first time, the system had worked. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was winning. The next day at school, Ethan was gone. His locker was empty, his seat in class was unoccupied. The whispers started immediately. Did you hear? His dad's under investigation. They're saying they might disbar him. Ethan's transferring to some private school upstate. Maya walked through the halls, feeling something she hadn't in a long time, relief. At lunch, she sat across from Luke, watching as people stole glances at them, their expressions unreadable. Some looked impressed, others looked nervous. Luke smirked. You notice they're all suddenly quiet? Maya nodded. Yeah, they're scared, he said, picking up his sandwich. They saw what happens when people fight back. Maya let that sink in. For so long, she had believed she was powerless, that Ethan and people like him would always win. But that wasn't true. People like Judge Carter only had power because they were allowed to have it, because people stayed silent, because no one pushed back. But this time, someone had. And this time, they had lost. Maya took a deep breath, letting herself enjoy the moment. She wasn't naive, she knew this wasn't the end. There would always be another Ethan, another Dorson, another person trying to keep people like her in their place. But now she knew something she hadn't before, she wasn't alone. And that changed everything from BUP stories.